you so much for sharing with us in a winter serenade this morning. It feels like a winter day, right? It's an appropriate title. You may have recognized that first song from George Frederick Handel's Messiah. I love that pastoral tune. It really does create an image in your mind of sheep and a countryside. And you remember that this tune actually puts into a music tune the text from Isaiah 40. Speaking of Jehovah, he shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs in his arms and carry them in his bosom. Well, our second piece was written by another famous composer. Actually, would you know, born the same year as George Frederick Handel. This is Johann Sebastian Bach. They were both born in 1685, a little while ago, right? And interestingly, he, along with Handel, was German-born, and he was also a very influential composer in the late Baroque period. For those of you who are musical, you'll appreciate that, right? And one thing he often did was write pieces for church music. He wrote a wide variety of genres, but mainly we appreciate him for his choral pieces, for his church music. And this one was actually written for the third Sunday after Epiphany, which, interestingly enough, was just this past Sunday in our 2023 calendar. So this piece was originally written for oboe and strings, but adapted for flute. Our next piece was written by another very famous composer in church music, only he is still alive today, John Rutter. You may recognize his name. He has been commissioned for a lot of momentous events in the British royal family. He wrote a piece of the Psalm 150 commissioned for the Queen's Golden Jubilee, and of course was also commissioned to write a piece called This is the Day for Prince William and Princess Kate's wedding. Only today you're not going to hear a choral piece that was adapted for flute. You're actually going to hear a suite written for flute called Suite Antique. We're going to play the fifth movement called Chanson. It's a melodic, lovely piece, and we really have enjoyed practicing it because it does create that very picturesque, very relaxed setting maybe you'd see in a All Creatures Great and Small movie or something like that. So enjoy Chanson from Suite Antique. up is part of Mozart's Concerto in D for flute. And there's a funny story about this. But first, let me just remind you who Mozart was. Did you know he only lived for 35 years? But he was nonetheless a very prolific composer. And we've bumped up now to the classical era. We were in Baroque and now we're in classical. Now, interesting about this piece, apparently in the late 1770s, he was commissioned to write a handful of flute quartets and concerti. Well, he hadn't met his quota yet and time was running out, so he decided he would recycle a piece that he had written for oboe. Well, we actually have some writings that have been saved all the way back from the 1770s, where he was writing to his father and he was complaining that he hadn't been paid adequately because the person who commissioned him to do this piece realized that he had just polished it off from another bookcase. Nonetheless, we don't mind playing recycled music, so we will enjoy this piece, originally written for oboe, but now used for flute. Take it easy. Well, speaking of reworking for another instrument, famous Irish flautist James Galway was so taken by Antonio Vivaldi's Winter, actually the whole Four Seasons, that he adapted it for flute. So this morning we get to play one of the parts of Winter. Now it's funny, Molly and I were laughing as we were preparing for this recital. We said, wouldn't it be funny if the day that we had a recital, it was cold and chilly and no one wanted to come out and they wanted to stay by their fireplace? Well, incidentally, I think we have our wish, but the neat thing about this is that Vivaldi actually penned a few little music notes at the top of this Largo piece, and he describes a really lovely winter scene. He says, "We pass the day contented by the fireside. Outside it is raining very hard." Well, our final song is a fitting ending for our time together as it brings us full circle, actually, to the theme of shepherding, God, our shepherd in this case. Molly and I love the setting of this ancient Irish tune, St. Columba, arranged by Dan Forrest. The third stanza, I would love for you to listen out for it. The third stanza, as you can see in your program, traces how we often go astray like a lost sheep, perverse and foolish. Oft I strayed. And listen for the way in the arrangement that the music reflects that disjointed wandering. But amazingly, of course, it doesn't end there, right? God, our shepherd, is an expert at seeking us, finding us, bringing us back to himself. And what I love about this piece is that it really does crescendo to the end, which reflects the fact that God doesn't bring us to himself just to allow us to remain mute, but rather so that we offer a lifetime of praise that gradually crescendos more and more all the way into eternity. Thank you.